Well, that what I call the Gadanyu as a kind of heart opening. I call it for me it was a heart opening experience. Before that, so much of my monastic life was still operating from the very self-centered ego, where I want to get my practice, get my jhanas, get my samadhi, get enlightened. There's so much of me as a person trying to get things and operate, within the system in order to, from this very willful, self-centered position. And this experience of Gadanyu that I had in India was, I saw through that. The heart opened up wide. Before, I say I had a closed-off heart, like a tight fist, just tight, and and I'm the most, I'm in this to get enlightened for myself. And then after the Gadanyu experience and insight, it was like the sense of something had really shifted. That tight, self-centered selfishness seemed to have resolved itself. And all I could think of then was going back to Thailand and helping, supporting in any way, being a good disciple to Lumpur Cha. I thought the only way you can repay a teacher that's given you so much is to be a good disciple, practice what he was teaching. I knew that would make him very pleased, and not to be a pain to him, not to give him any problems. So at that time Ajahn Chah was expanding, the monasteries were growing everywhere, and there were all kinds of people seeking ordination, and the amount of disciples increased. And there were always problems in any monastery. There are always going to be problems. And so I thought, well, I'm going to make an effort not to be a problem to Lumpur Cha. So when I went back to India, from India to Thailand, I offered myself a kind of magnanimous gesture. I offer myself to you. And of course, he just smiled, and then eventually he sent me off to establish Wat Pa Nana Chat, which is exactly the thing I most didn't want to do. Now, even though Ajahn Chah was good at getting me to do things I didn't want to do, I did have confidence and trust in him, in his wisdom, after living with him for many years. That I didn't really question it. My vow was to help in any way I could, and to do what I could, what Lumpur Cha wanted me to do, and to be a good disciple to him and practice what I'd learned with the teaching he'd given me. So this led eventually to 2 years I was at Nana Chat, and then the Southeast Asia fell to the communists, a panic in Thailand, and eventually I began to think about going back to the West, which strangely enough I ended up in England rather than the United States. Now this, in teaching in England for 33 years now, where, say, you have, like our monasteries in England, we have two main monasteries, Amaravati, which is in Hertfordshire, north of London, and the first monastery that we had, it was south of London in West Sussex, Cittaviveka. And so there was a great interest in Buddhist meditation, in samatha vipassana practices amongst the British and Europeans. In general, there was, we began to grow very rapidly. And of course, seeing, the results of of living in England, which is the country I know the best, living there for 33 years and teaching meditation and establishing monasteries, ordaining monks, nuns there, and to train them with the Vinaya, and to develop the values of samana, sanya. So like the monastic tradition that the Buddha established is based on alms mendicancy. And this, of course, is totally anachronistic to Western European culture. And so to make yourself, without, any support, to depend on the four requisites, and that was something that was just not in the minds of people in the West, either in North America or in Europe at the time. And it's still difficult for people to really appreciate, because it's something so out of place in the value systems of modern life in Europe or America at this time. And yet, living in England for this long period, there's never been any shortage of the requisites. Like the four requisites the Buddha allowed samanas. He allowed us a robe. We can wear a robe which is based on a very low standard of material, rag robes. So the Buddha said you can get your cloth from what's left over, what the society throws out. Or we go to charnel grounds where they wrap corpses in cloth, and you could take that. You could take the kind of rags that the lay communities didn't want. And so that's about as low a standard for clothing as you can imagine. And of course this is, and this wasn't a rule-based, this isn't a rule that you can only do that. But what happened was that the lay people began to have such faith in the followers of the Buddha that they offered to present good quality material to them. And that's what the katina ceremonies are. Every year after the Vasa we have the katina, this traditional ceremony of offering cloth to the monastic sangha. And of course, because I've never had to go off and take rags off a corpse or anything like that. In fact, they usually give me high quality cloth. But we have to sew it and make it look like rags, patches, and dye it an ugly color like this. But then food is a necessity. You have something to wear, something to eat. So he allowed us to have an alms bowl, as you saw us all eating from alms bowls. And of course this means that we go out and collect food. As bindabata means dropping food into a bowl. So this is a custom, of an alms mendicant, and it's based on a low standard. We're not gourmets, or so we want only your best food. We take what is offered, So you're going on bindabata, and people, whether they're poor or wealthy, or they're good cooks or not very good cooks, or whether they're vegetarian or meat-eating people, we take what is offered, and this is, the practice of alms food. So we're dependent on this, the lay community offering food, and then shelter. It would be very difficult in England. It's based on root of a tree. I can't imagine, living very long under a root of a tree in England without dying. In India you can actually see that, and you have these magnificent trees there, but how, or here in Malaya it probably is possible, but not in England. It would be really hard work to have to stay under a tree. But notice that the standard is always the lowest possible one, because then something's always offered that's better than this low reference point. And then for medicine for illness, we have to have medicine, and this is based on a very low standard of that time, fermented cow's urine. So this shocks the British, so they really come forth when we get sick, see that we get good medical health. And so these four requisites are reflected on every day in monasteries, the four requisites, because you're training yourself as a samana to see that this is the four requisites are adequate for the day. They're not guaranteed for a lifetime or anything. So it's just today I have a shelter, food. I receive food in the alms bowl. I have a robe and medicine for any sickness that I have. And then arises the katanyu, gratitude, because we live our lives always in this way of depending on the good-heartedness and generosity of others. And of course, the lay people, whether they're here in Malaya or in Thailand or in England, they're always giving us, they find joy in offering. And even monks who have gone tudong or walking in England, Scotland and Ireland, have gone, bindabata or receiving food in villages where there aren't any Buddhists, and yet you still receive food. People come forth once they understand what you need. It seems to bring up a very good quality of mind in the lay community, even if they're not Buddhists or they don't really understand what you are. It seems to generate goodness in itself. And of course, this alms mendicant tradition has survived 2,552 years, which says a lot for the wisdom of the Buddha, because there's not many traditions that have such a long lineage that I know of, that are still existent at this time. Now, this tradition also has maintained its purity. It's not been corrupted or adapted all out of proportion. It seems to be able to adapt itself to the rise and falls of many different political systems and periods of development and progress, and then of degeneration and loss. You look at the history of Buddhism over that period of time, and it is about, it's at period of times it flourishes, and other times it seems to fade away. But it still survives. And up to this today here in Kuala Lumpur, this very moment, the monks, the bhikkhus, the nuns here representing that tradition and that lineage that traces itself back to the original Buddha in India, that established the Dhamma teaching and the